This is, and rightfully so, might I add, one of the most anticipated, not just non conference games, but games overall for the 2025 college football season. Two potentially top 20 teams, depending on how things go for them with their new quarterbacks and their new offenses. This was two teams a year ago who could not move the football consistently at all. If you're a Michigan fan, you watched the season play out. You saw Davis Warren take snaps, Alex Orji, Jack Tuttle, and it was just no consistency anywhere at any point whatsoever. Very frustrating. Same boat for Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma last year, they were in a lot of ways very similar to Michigan, where they had a really good defense that was just forced to continue to go back on the field over and over and over again, and you can only make so many stops and so many plays when you get no time to rest. But Oklahoma also dealt with a lot of injuries. They were just decimated by injuries last year. And, these two teams, they went out and they addressed their issue, which was not being able to score points on the offensive side of the ball. So Oklahoma goes out and gets John Mateer from Washington State, absolute stud, and we'll talk about him a little bit more in a little bit. Michigan goes out and they get Bryce Underwood, the number one overall recruit in the country, to flip from LSU and sign with them. Kid is an absolute physical specimen, about 6'4", 215 pounds as a 17-year-old. And then Oklahoma brings in, along with Mateer from Washington State, Ben Arbuckle, 29 years old, coached Cam Ward in 2023. Obviously last year coached Mateer, a very, very smart and brilliant young football mind. And then Michigan brings in Chip Lindsey to be their new offensive coordinator. So they went out and they're trying to find solutions. And I think they're both going to be a lot better than they were a year ago. It would be very difficult to be worse than either of their offenses were a year ago, but it's exciting. And this is kind of cool because this game being in week 2, it's sort of, part 2 of the game meets Red River. Obviously, Texas going to Ohio State week 1 in a rematch of the semifinal college football playoff game in the Cotton Bowl. And then week 2, Michigan goes to Oklahoma for a night game in Norman. So pretty cool that these 4 programs who are college football blue bloods, Michigan and Ohio State being from the Big Ten, Texas and Oklahoma being from the SEC. It's really cool to see them all competing with each other. And then let's kind of talk about the coaches a little bit. So Brent Venables heading into year 4. I mean, this is a huge year for Brent. If things don't go well this year, even with how difficult the schedule is, that seat's going to get really hot. Year 1, they went 6-7. Year 2, 10-3. Last year, 6-7. He's got an overall record of 22-17, and he's now taking over the defensive play calling, which I think is a great move. He was the DC at Clemson when they won 2 national championships in 2016 and 2018. So I think it's a really good idea for him to kind of take the reins and lead the charge for the defense. Sharon Moore, on the other hand, heading into year 2, Michigan went 8-5 last year. Sharon, as a coach at Michigan, he coached the offensive line, and they actually won the Joe Moore Award for being the best offensive line in the country in 2021 and 2022. In 2023, when they didn't win it, they beat the team who did in the national title game in Washington to win the national championship. And this is a cool game because Sharon Moore actually played at Oklahoma in 2006 and 2007, so sort of a homecoming for him. But for this game, ultimately, I think there's a lot more pressure on Oklahoma and Brent Venables. Year 4 for him, year 2 for Sharon. It's at home. You have the more experienced quarterback. You have the veteran. And for Michigan, obviously they're not going to be happy if they start the year off week 2 with a loss, but I don't think the Michigan fans are going to be as upset as the Sooner fans if they are to lose this game at home against a young, inexperienced quarterback. We'll start off with Oklahoma's offense against the Michigan defense. And like I mentioned a little bit ago, Ben Arbuckle comes in 29 years old. In 2021 and 2022, he was at Western Kentucky. In 23 and 24, he was at Washington State. Again, Coach Cam Ward and then John Mateer last year. Really smart coach, really young, has a ton of ideas. For not only just him to come over and implement his offense into the Oklahoma football program, but to have John Mateer come over with him and already know the system and the language, they can both help pull everybody else along and get them up to speed. So that's really big, and I don't think enough people are talking about that. And you go to the running back room, it is really, really deep. Obviously, they brought in Jaden Ott from Cal. Really, really good get. One of the best players, one of the best running backs in the transfer portal. Javante Barnes, senior, back for another year. And then you've got two sophomores. Xavier Robinson's had some really bright moments, and then Taylor Tatum kind of had a problem with, fumbling the ball. He's got to take better care of it, but a great athlete, also a baseball player. This is a really, really talented room and just a lot of playmakers in there. And then the receiving room, this was a room a year ago that was just decimated by injuries. And now I could, sit here for 20 minutes talking about all the different players in there, but really the top three guys, Deion Burks, transferred from Purdue a few years back, going to be that guy in the slot, a really talented receiver. Giovanni Gibson, who broke his leg but should be good to go in week 1. Really hoping he can have a fast and speedy recovery, get back up to speed. And then you have Jaden Gibson, 6'5", 190 pounds, a really big target for John Mateer. So really talented receiver room. They got some guys out there, and Mateer's going to get them the ball. The tight end room, it's not really known how much Arbuckle is going to use the tight ends, but one guy I really like is Will Huggins, 6'6", 260 pounds. Just a massive target, a guy that you can kind of just lob the ball up to. I think he'll be a pretty good player. Carson Kent and Caden Helms are in that room as well. And then the offensive line, this was another room that just got destroyed by injuries a year ago. Left tackle Logan Howland started the last 5 games of the season last year, but you also have Michael Fasusi, who was the 5th overall recruit in the previous recruiting class, according to the composite, which combines all of the recruiting sites' rankings together. Kid's an absolute stud, and he's definitely going to be pushing to get some playing time. Left guard, Jacob Sexton. He started at left guard last year. He got injured at Ole Miss, and then Heath took over for him after the injury, so a little bit of a competition there to see who gets the starting left guard spot. At center, Troy Everett, who missed the first 5 games of the year with an injury and then started the following 7. Looks like he's going to be the starter there, but they do have a transfer coming in from Stanford, and Jake McCullough, who didn't just transfer in to sit around, is going to want to play, so a lot of competition. You go to the right guard position, Fabichi Nwanu. He started every game at right guard last year. That's like the one spot where this is the guy. This is who's going to be playing in this position. But then at right tackle, you have Derek Simmons, who transferred in from Western Carolina, an FCS program. Did not allow a single sack last year. And then you have Jake Taylor there as well, who started there at right tackle in 4 games. A lot of depth on this offensive line. That's always a good thing, especially with injuries. I think that this is one of the deeper offensive lines in the country, and having all these guys compete with one another to get those starting roles is just going to make them that much better. And then when you go and look at the Michigan defense, obviously they lost a lot of talent from this previous year. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, Josiah Stewart, but they have a lot of depth as well. And the defensive tackle room, I can really see them rotating 6 guys. Rashawn Benny's going to be the leader in that room. You get Trey Williams transferring over from Clemson, Trey Pierce heading into another year, Damon Payne transferring from Alabama, Ike Iwuna, a veteran player who has just stuck it out, kept his head down, and continued to work, and then Enal Etta going into his 3rd year. And then the defensive end room, Derek Moore and TJ Guy are your solidified starters, but you have some pretty good depth there with Cameron Brandt and Dominic Nichols backing them up. The linebacking room, you return both your starters from a year ago in Ernest Hausman and Jayshawn Barham. The safety room, Rod Moore back. He couldn't play at all last year with a non-contact knee injury that he suffered in spring ball. Really hope to see him healthy this year. TJ Metcalf transferring in from Arkansas, going to be a guy that gets a lot of starts, a lot of playing time. And Brandon Hillman, who is just a heat-seeking missile and is always trying to punish the ball carrier. And then it looks like they're going to be trying to get Mason Curtis to start at that nickel position, a 6'5" safety, really talented player. And Tevis Metcalf is kind of battling him there to get some more snaps. And then both corners return. That started at least in the back half of the season with Will Johnson out and Ezekiel Berry, who they kicked outside, who was playing nickel early on in his career, now is a full-time corner, and Jair Hill. And then obviously Wink Martindale, heading into year 2 at the University of Michigan, longtime NFL vet. Things started off a little shaky. Feels like he's got his footing now and kind of knows how the college game operates and how to call this defense. This offense and this defense, it's going to be a really, really fun matchup to watch, especially a young coach like Ben Arbuckle against a really old and seasoned veteran in Wink Martindale. So, going to be a lot of fun. The Michigan offense against the Oklahoma defense. Chip Lindsey comes in, first year as the OC at Michigan. Coach Drake May at North Carolina, was a part of his development. And now he gets to coach Bryce Underwood, the number 1 overall recruit from the previous recruiting class. Michigan flipped him from LSU. I mean, he's got all the physical tools. He's got really good coaches. And if they can get him ready to go for that game, then, I'm all for it. But it's not going to be an easy task. The running back room, Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes. Jordan Marshall going into his second year, saw limited snaps a year ago with Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullings taking the bulk of the carries. And then Justice Haynes transferring in from Alabama, a really, really talented player that Michigan was able to win over South Carolina from the portal. In the receiving room, this is another room where we could talk about a bunch of different guys, like who's going to make the difference, but we would be sitting here for another 20 minutes. The 3 guys I really want to focus on are Donovan McCulley, 6'5", 200 pounds, transfer from Indiana, actually played at quarterback his true freshman year there. Frederick Moore, who's shown some glimpses of being a really solid player, but again, they just haven't had that stability at quarterback for him to be able to show everything he has. And then Samaj Morgan, who's just a speedster, a burner. And what it sounds like is they're going to give him more options this year. And what I mean by that is it's not just going to be screens and bubbles and horizontal passing game to him. It's going to be more downfield shots, and he sounds really excited about it. The tight end room, Marlon Klein and Hogan Hansen, most likely going to be getting the most snaps there. Marlon Klein, a big target, 6'6", 250. Hogan Hansen, about 6'5", 240, a little more quick, light-footed, a little bit better of a route runner and a pass catcher. I think Hogan Hansen's going to be a really solid player for them this year. And then Max Bredesen, if you really want to qualify him as a tight end, he's more of a fullback, but does a lot of the dirty work, blocking linebackers, helping with kickouts. And then the offensive line, this is a room where I think a lot of Michigan fans were hoping that they were going to add a little bit more through the portal, but sounds like Michigan's going to roll with what they got there. Evan Link is the projected starter at left tackle. Was pretty shaky last year, but he was a second-year player, and he kind of got thrown into the fire. Reports out of spring ball were that he wasn't looking the best. He looked shaky still. I have faith that he will develop and become a really solid left tackle. But you also have Andrew Babalola looking to get some playing time, a 5-star recruit who, again, he enrolled early. He wants to play. He's not just going to sit back and let the other guys get the snaps. Left guard, you have a veteran in Giovanni Alhadi, a 5th-year player, along with Greg Crippen at center, another veteran 5th-year player. Those are the 2 guys that are the glue on that offensive line who are really going to lead and help everyone develop along the way. At right guard, you got a position battle there between Nathan Afobe and Lawrence Hattar, who transferred from Ferris State University, won a couple of national titles there, and is now ready to compete at the Power 4 level. And then at right tackle, A guy that I'm pretty excited about is Andrew Sprague, a second-year player, played as a true freshman in that bowl win against Alabama. 6'8", about 305 pounds. I think he's going to develop into a first-round draft pick, and I think he's going to be one of the better offensive linemen for Michigan this year. And then Brady Norton's kind of battling it out at tackle as well. Cal Poly transfer, not a big guy, but really, really smart and is always in the right place and always uses the right technique. And then you look at this Oklahoma defense, and you've got in this defensive tackle room, which might be the most talented defensive tackle room in the country, Dominic Williams, who transferred in from TCU. I remember him as a true freshman starting when he beat Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl in the college football playoff. Heading into another year in Norman, Jaden Jackson, Grayson Holton, and David Stone, who entered the portal and then decided to come back. And I think part of the reason he entered the portal was he was looking around going, look at all these guys we got here. I'm never going to get, the amount of snaps I want. They talked him out of it, got him to return, and I think he's going to have a really productive year. And these four guys, with the talent they have and the rotation that they're going to be able to have, they're always going to be fresh, and it's going to be a really tough task for opposing offensive lines to block them an entire game. And then the defensive end / edge room, R. Mason Thomas, who is going to be a first or second round draft pick, just a insanely talented player, a leader on that defense, and is expected to really ball out this year. And then they went and got Marvin Jones Jr. to transfer in from Florida State, another really talented player, long arms, tall, able to really give trouble to opposing offensive tackles in the pass rush. And then another guy, Adu Puju Adabarowe. I hope I said that right. It's a really hard name to say, but former 5-star recruit, heading into his third year, and he's ready to make a name for himself. You have Thomas and you have Jones Jr., but whenever one of those guys is rotated out, you better believe he's going to come in and make some really good plays. I mean, this defensive line is just insanely talented, and insanely deep, too. Like, they've just got dudes everywhere. And then the linebacking core is really solid as well. Obviously, Danny Stutzman now gone, but Kip Lewis, 6'1", 230 pounds. Kobe McKenzie, 6'2", 240 pounds. Just absolute beasts on that front six, front seven. And then the safety room, which I would feel really good about if I was a Sooner fan. Robert Spears-Jennings and Peyton Bowen, really good 1-2 tandem right there. The cheetah position, Kendall Dolby, 5'10", 195 pounds. I know he got hurt and had his season ended last year with that injury against Tennessee. Hope he's fully back up to speed and can have a great season. He's a really good player. And then the cornerback room, which might be the area of most concern for Oklahoma fans regarding their defense. But Eli Bowen and Gentry Williams, who has been dealing with, shoulder problems for pretty much the entirety of his time in Norman. Hope he can stay healthy. Expecting a really big year out of him. And then Brent Venables, again, taking over the defense. Now going to be calling the shots there. Love that decision. Think it's a really, really smart move for them. This Michigan offense, I don't know really what to expect them to do against this Oklahoma defense. I really think we're going to know a lot more on that week 1 game. And I know it's kind of stating the obvious, but even with it being against much lesser competition, just to see Bryce Underwood out there and take his first snaps as a collegiate quarterback, it's really going to paint the picture of how fast he's adapting to the college speed, the terminology, the play calling, and just the complexities of it. As of right now, I wouldn't really expect Michigan to put up more than 17 points. Maybe even that's a little high because this Oklahoma defense is really, really good, really talented. They're going to be really well coached. And having a first-year offensive coordinator, a new system, a freshman quarterback, that's not going to be an easy task. My final thoughts on this game are that everyone should kind of expect it to be a low-scoring type of ball game where if you get to 20 points, you've got a very, very high probability of winning. Both defenses, incredibly deep, very talented, led by veteran defensive coaches who know the game inside and out. Two of the deepest front sevens in college football. Both fan bases aren't really sure how good their offensive lines are going to be. Oklahoma, again, dealt with a ton of injuries a year ago. Michigan was not able to meet their standard that they had set previously. And Oklahoma, I mean, when you look at what's going to be the tiebreaker here, it's kind of obvious, like the quarterback position. And I don't really know anyone that would take, at this moment, Bryce Underwood over an experienced veteran like John Mateer. So is John Mateer going to be that guy that's the difference maker in this game? A positive for Michigan is if this game plays out the way most of us are expecting it to, they've got the best kicker in the country. So if they're able to get to the 35-yard line in Oklahoma's territory on any given drive, Dominic Savada can get you 3 points. Should be an incredible game. Two phenomenal defenses. Really excited to see both of these new offensive coordinators and quarterbacks operate in their respective offenses. I just can't wait for college football to start, and I'm expecting this to be one of the better games and one of the more entertaining games of the college football regular season.